Also have a Kennedy that I thought was good, but turned out not to be.
And was your father in the political realm, or he was just a go-getter?
He was a psychoanalyst.
Okay.
Who became president of the American Psychiatric Association. So,
all right.
So I come to you pre-shrunk.
Okay. Daniel, meet Richard Minsky. Richard?
Hi.
Hey, Richard.
A couple of book mentions here.
I got a book.
Daniel, meet Richard Minsky. Richard?
Hi, Daniel.
Someone's got, we got some reverb going on here.
Yes.
Richard, do you have a speaker on or something?
Let's see.
Do you have headphones? Reverb going on here.
Yes.
Richard, do you have a speaker on or something?
Could be. Maybe that's how I'm hearing you. Last time I had it on, it didn't reverb, and it doesn't on Zoom.
Richard, do you have a speaker on or something?
Yeah, could be. Maybe that's how I'm hearing you. Last time I had it on, it didn't reverb, and it doesn't on Zoom.
All right, we'll see if we get our producer Alan in here. That's why we get this thing going early.
Yeah, Alan? Maybe that's how I'm hearing you. Last time I had it on, it didn't reverb, and it doesn't on Zoom.
All right, we'll see if we get our producer Alan in here. That's why we get this thing going early.
Yeah, Alan?
Richard, turn down your volume for now. All right, let's see if we get our producer Alan in here. That's why we get this. Okay, we'll get that fixed.
Hopefully. I have to turn mine off, and so my tech guy helped me with it. He's my Civil War man. Yeah.
So that was back in the day when you could just send a book to a president and say, here,
you
sign
got
it
it.
My son.
Yep, you could do that. And today that can't be done, but you could back then. But the Kennedy was a secretarial. I didn't know that till many, many years later. Found that out when a new study on Kennedy secretaries came out, and there she was. And then when Caroline came to my hometown some years ago, and on a book tour of her own, I brought it to her, showed it to her, and asked her to sign it. So a real Kennedy would be in there.
Oh, nice. He's got to be one of the hardest.
Did the reverb stop when I turned off my volume?
I think so. I don't think I hear it now.
Real Kennedy would be in there.
No, I hear it now.
Nice.
Richard, testing 1, 2. Okay, I think we're okay now, but I don't know if you have your volume on. Richard, testing 1, 2.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, but we have a delay. It's reverberating back in. But I don't know if you have your volume on.
I just turned my volume up so I could hear you. Okay. And I'll put it down again.
I'm going to call on Alan, our producer, to check in here.
Now I'm talking, and I have the volume turned down.
Yeah.
Modern technology.
Yeah. It is amazing. I mean, we get people on this show from all over the world, all time zones. But when you finally get it in the can, you can listen to it anytime, anywhere. That really is modern. I mean, I'm sitting here with a cup of tea, and you're getting ready for lunch out there, and over in we do have a big following over in Egypt because we have a book restorer, Sharif Al Fifi from Cairo University, come on periodically.
Far out.
Yeah, so I think it's like 10:30 at night over there.
Yeah, wow. We do this. This is a broadcast studio right behind you here. Are 2 cameras that we can use. We've been doing this since 2004, live author signings and interviews. I just did one this week
Yeah, I didn't know this until you mentioned it to me earlier this week. I'm going to sign up to follow those.
Please, yeah, we have fun. And you can go to YouTube and see tons of them.
Okay.
And we also do something called Take a Break with History. We started when the pandemic began.
Mm-hmm.
And once a week, we talk about an artifact in here called Take a Break with History. And we do it on Facebook Live so people can comment and ask questions. And it's been very popular. It's been a lot of fun.
And are the artifacts part of your company artifacts?
Oh my, yeah, because we have autographs,
Sure.
we have busts, we have oil paintings and ephemera of all sort, campaign, mourning material, lithographs, all sorts of things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I just got 2 pieces of wood with bullets stuck in it from the Civil War.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think we're seeing. I participated in the ephemera show a couple of months ago. Many book dealers around there. I think we're starting to see book dealers in general spread out their definitions a little bit, at least into anything made of paper.
Yes, right. I just see this competition. Although the auction houses are the real competition.
Right. Yeah. Hindman's. Recently, I've been seeing Hindman's come up with some very impressive sales.
Oh yeah, she's done very well. Yeah.
Leslie
Heineman. She's in Chicago. Leslie Heineman in Chicago.
Okay, Heineman. I'm sorry,
right,
Heineman. Yeah.
And Collins is now subsumed by them. So Collins and Heineman are now together.
Okay, and if I think Christie's bought Heineman, didn't they?
No, someone else did. A private guy.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Good morning to our visitors. Luke, we've got Luke in here from Windsor, Ontario. Hello, Luke. I don't see the clock. I think we're live. Okay, good morning. Hello, everybody. Well, at least it's good morning for me. Here I am in Portland, Oregon. Welcome to the Rare Book Cafe, the only live broadcast weekly on rare books and the people who love them. We're so glad to have you back this week. You see with me on screen today our guest Daniel Weinberg from the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop in Chicago, Illinois. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, Ed. Thanks for having me here.
Good. Ever since I saw that show Murder Amongst the Mormons on Netflix and everybody else in the industry, the topic of forgeries has just been hot. And I'm so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, well, of course, Mark Hoffman is a known entity to many people, and the Salamander Letter is well known. There's a book on that, 3 books on him, and of course, Lee Israel, and the Can You Forgive Me book that she did, and the film of the same title that came out a few years ago.
Okay. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Well, everybody, the Rare Book Cafe, the book lovers' rendezvous, where the topics are priceless and the conversation is free. The Rare Book Cafe, brought to you weekly. You know our times. We're live streaming on YouTube and Facebook right now, immediately at this moment, at both sources, and you can hear us 24/7 on podcast. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And we go by Rare Book Raw, RAW, on the audio only version. Rare Book Raw on your favorite podcast delivery mechanism. Before we get too deep into this, I want to mention that we are live stream, but we do have a couple of pre-recorded sessions, so we're not trying to pull a fast one. And our pre-recorded session this week is going to be David Hess of the Bookman Bookstore in Orange, California, with his popular Things Found in Old Books. Then later in the program, Richard Minsky from who's been on the show before, a book artist with a celebration coming up, is going to join us. And then we're going to have Mary Kay and a fascinating story, The Night of the Hunter. One of the few times people can say the movie might have been better than the book. Well, we're going to talk about that. But first, Daniel, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so as I said, you're the proprietor of the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop, and you're also a member of PADA, P-A-D-A, is that right? Professional Autograph
Autograph
Dealers
Dealers Association.
Association. Very good. Okay, thank you. Uh, have you ever seen an attempted forged Abraham Lincoln signature?
Ay, ay, ay. It's the bane of my existence. I've seen it for forever, it seems. I've been here since 1971 at the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop. We began in 1938 to specialize in Lincoln and the Civil War, and it comes in all the time. And they're very well-known forgers of Lincoln. And I have a collection of about 74 of them so far that I've taken off the market. I purchased them at low prices to get them off the market. Eventually, I'll get them into some institution. They're fascinating, wow. And I know the different ones. I have a few here when you're ready for me to show them, if you like.
No, show them now if you have them.
Okay, well, I mean, the two that first of all, let me show you some real ones. Here is one that's called an affixed seal document and a full Abraham Lincoln. And this is an order to affix a seal of the United States to something, in this case to a consulship for a good friend of his. And here is a note, that's with the full Abraham Lincoln. He had about 35,000 full signatures that he had to sign during his time. And here is a note, it's on two sides. Let's see if I can show this to you, okay. Here's one that on a little card that he would have on his desk. And then he wrote this out, and so he wrote out many of these small ones as well, and these are originals that I just showed you.
Excuse me, Daniel. So you said over his 4-year presidency, he signed about 35,000 affixed sealed documents. These are the ones where we see somebody.
No, not just affixed a seal, official documents. So that's official military and naval commissions, appointments from the Interior or Secretary of State Department or Treasury Department.
These are the ones we see for sale today between $5,000 and $12,000 usually.
Depending upon what it's for. Content,
exactly.
Just like a letter is everything.
Sure.
So if you're getting a commission that is for George Meade or General Meade or for Grant, it's going to be a little bit more, thank you.
Sure. Okay.
So those are some real ones. Now here I'll show you two different ones that I see quite a bit. Probably the one that I see most often is a guy named Eugene Field II, who was the son of the poet, mainly for children's books for Eugene Field. And the son was a forger. And he was here in Chicago. And here I'll show you one of his. Now this is a book that's actually a real book that he got. He gets them, and this is a campaign biography in 1860 for Lincoln. And what he did then, he always put in his father's signature in, and then he put in, let me see if I can get this for you, Abraham Lincoln, and he also put Lincoln and Herndon and above that. This is my book, A. Lincoln. So that's a Eugene Field II. And he always did on the back, in the back of the books or pamphlets, he put in this, in 1935, this book came from the library of my father, Eugene Field. And of course, it's his signature. Yeah, he did this a lot. Here he did one, the same sort of thing on the Dred Scott case. Yeah, except here, he said also that his grandfather was in on the case as defendant, and that he signed this as well. Let's see, right there is his alleged grandfather, and there's his alleged father on top. And of course, there's Lincoln twice. He overdid it. And Lincoln never did any of these. The other one, so Eugene Field with that stuff in the back is constant. He did books and pamphlets all the time. Another one you see also mainly with pamphlets is one that I have a map of from Ohio, actually, from the Civil War by Colton. And in this one, the actual signature has been Yeah, defaced. So no one will buy it as a Lincoln. I don't like to see an actual forgery defaced myself, but there you go. Just take it off the market. But here is the interesting thing. He went in, he found, this is really Dan Sickles now, Daniel Dayton Sickles. I'm sorry to say, a bookseller here in Chicago. And he found in Michigan the coachman for Mary, older black gentleman who was literally had been Mary Lincoln's coachman. And he went up there with things like this, or books or pamphlets, and he had the coachman sign this. That's his signature right there, William Brown, and saying that this came from the collection of Abraham Lincoln and was given to me by to William Brown, coachman by Mrs. Lincoln, and then had a notary say the signature is genuine. But the notary was saying William Brown's signature is genuine. But really what they then did when they came back, he came back to Chicago and put in the Lincoln here. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way there. You can't see it, but then he was saying that's what Brown and the notary was saying was authentic. And it ain't.
How creative.
So those are the two that I see all the time. And Lincoln is worth forging. Now, there's reasons why there's no Millard Fillmore bookshop, and the same thing why there are no Millard Fillmore forgeries. So,
do you think there are modern, contemporary, operative forgers today, 2021?
Positively. Really? And I know at least one right now, and I knew two. One was kind of well known in the Lincoln world for other things and not known as a forger, but he was, and I found that out. And another one from the same hometown actually was also a forger. And he used to come up to me all the time with Lincoln Mill notes. And the interesting thing is that I spotted it, knew what he was doing after that. And I said, no. And he pumped me for information. Why? Why don't you think it's good? And I wouldn't tell him. I'm not going to educate him as to why he should have forgeries and do better forgeries.
Well, Daniel, unfortunately, not all of our viewers can afford an Abraham Lincoln signature. So let's talk a little bit about more down-to-earth autographs. First of all, are you prefer an autograph or an inscription? Or how do you feel about an inscription for an association copy?
Well, association copies are always great because of the association. And the better the association, probably the higher price it's going to be if the person who's inscribing it is worth something as well. I mean, there are many books that are out there that are signed by authors that don't have much value, and we all know that. So it's the person who's inscribing it. I think I mentioned to you in the promo that if you're going to go today to get a book signed for you, first edition, hopefully, by an author today, it's best not to have your own name inscribed in. It's better just to have just the author's signature. Unless, as I mentioned to you before, if you're going to have your name put in by the author, then you either better become president or shoot one so that you'll become famous enough to be collectible.
Okay, good. What should people be looking for? I mean, there's signatures out there on eBay. There are, the whole book selling from one end to another deals with autographs. What should people who collect autographs and purchase autographs be careful about, and how to protect themselves?
Well, you have to, first of all, be knowledgeable, educate yourself. If you're trying to start an autograph collection of some sort or you're getting them, be cognizant of the type of paper that it's on. Although I usually give paper to a forger. It's so easy to get, say, where I live in the 19th century, it's easy to get paper from a second page of a letter that was not used, or a end paper from a book or something like that. And then, of course, you have to understand ink of the day and what ink was used. Certainly, again, and where I live in the 19th century, it's an iron gall ink. 4 strains of it were there during Lincoln's time, and 2 of them went up into the 20th century, into the 1930s. A man named Cozy, Joseph Cozy, was adept at that with Lincoln especially. So he was a chemist, and that helped. So be careful about paper, be careful about ink. Then you have to study the handwriting itself and see if it's consistent with the time in the life of the writer as well. Although sometimes, like Lincoln again, I've seen him as president harken back to the 50s or 1850s, 1840s, even the 1830s with his signature. So you have to be a little careful, and then see if someone else might be writing for him. Secretarials are out there in abundance, and you have to know the secretarials, and then there have to be studies. More modern people, let's take Biden today, has secretaries signing for him. He also has auto pens. It's going to be some years until a study comes out with every auto pen that he used or every secretary who signed for him. With Lincoln, I see today even at auctions and in college catalogs where near the end of Lincoln's life, in the December of 64, through his death in April of 65, he was signing many pardons. Let this man take the oath of December 8th, 1863 and be discharged, a Lincoln, and a date. And John Hay, his secretary, who later became Secretary of State under McKinley, and was a poet and writer himself, was doing many of them for him. He was good. And he passes muster with many auction houses today. So you have to be careful to know that as well. Dealers and going to people that know their business too. I mean, besides educating yourself, which is a must. And also, before I go on with that, is say buy quality versus quantity. Start off with things that you love, because even if you change how you're doing things and you want to go a different route with the same person or autographs, at least the original things you get are still something dear to your heart. And use your passion to buy what you like. It's always best to try to buy collections, something that will have the whole will be more than the sum of its parts. I don't look at these as investments. They might be that. You do it for your own soul. That's what you collect for. Books, autographs, do it for yourself. And hopefully your estate will be able to get the money back, but you do it for yourself. And so be careful about what you're buying and from whom you buy it. So that's one of the things you talked about, Professional Autograph Dealers Association. And we were formed years ago because we saw so many unethical people were selling forged pieces. And we had to form to protect our industry. And so we did. And so we tried to encourage the appreciation and interest, of course, in autograph collecting, but we also promote very high standards. It's PADAWeb, PADAWEB.org. And not that there aren't others out there that are good, but we have banded together so that we can watch each other as well, we do, and have a place where you, a collector, especially the novice, will come and know that we will guarantee the authenticity of the autographs that we are placing in your hands.
Well, what does that mean, a guarantee? Because sometimes on some sites you'll see we offer a certificate of authenticity. What does that mean to your organization to offer a guarantee?
Well, a guarantee to me is the person giving you the guarantee. Again, it goes back to the dealer. A guarantee is just a piece of paper, but you have to know who you're buying from. And if that person is someone who is known in the industry, who is in numbers of associations like PADA or ABAA, the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America, or others that are known, then we all have ethics committees and watch ourselves. So that's the other thing you might want to make sure, check the background, because otherwise it's just a piece of paper as far as I'm concerned. There are a couple of very well-known ones out there. They've had some problems. They have good people as well in there, but they've had problems with going to court, for instance, being brought in there for their supposed authenticity. But certainly at PATA, we guarantee for the life of the person buying it that it's correct.
Excellent.
So that's how we approach it.
You said something earlier, Daniel, that was really quite prescient. You said make an investment in your soul. That not everything you buy should be seen as a materialistic investment, and few things could be more true. I know that's how I started out. But over time, you may lose interest in your collection. You may want to recoup a portion of it. How do you feel about autographs as an investment?
Well, if you're going to buy the Gettysburg Address, sure, there's an investment for you. Something with great content, but even then, first of all, if you're going to, you or your state is going to sell something back into the marketplace, I don't think everything should go into museums and libraries. I think that any collector of long standing should give something back to the community so that collectors coming up will have something to collect. Where would we be today if everything went into museums? So certainly you want to be careful about what you buy, that it's good and has content. That's the best thing. A signature is a signature, but there are people who can't afford any more, and so that still has value. But as you say, and I said, it's your soul that you're doing it for. Hopefully, you or your state will get your money back if you did it wisely. But it always depends upon the economy. And if you happen to come in and try to sell in 2008 or 9 or 10, you're probably going to have problems because no one could afford it. So people have to be able to afford that. One of the problems today is the middle class. The middle class has been, I found, a mainstay for autograph collecting. Certainly the high end, those with money can do that, afford it, and they do, and they continue to buy and produce wonderful collections. But I see autographs as across the board. It's something that is unique and interesting to do as a hobby, so that actually you can even retire to something. I learned from my father, you can't retire from something, you got to retire to something. Autograph collecting is a wonderful hobby to do that with.
Excellent, excellent. Daniel, I see that Lee Lynn, our contributor from Calhoun, Georgia, has joined us. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning.
Good afternoon for you.
Afternoon for me. I have a couple of questions for Daniel.
Please.
People who are what you would call a serial forger like Field, what do they get out of it? I mean, I know they may be trying to sell them for monetary gain, but it is the compulsion because I can get away with it, because obviously you recognize, people recognize their work. It's like has been a man at some book fairs that I've attended that everybody knows steals books, but he comes year after year after year and everyone recognizes him. And I guess he does it just for we pass the word on down the line when he walks in. And I guess he does it for the thrill of it. Is this something that motivates forgers as well?
Well, they're humans, so they're complex. And so they do it for various reasons. Certainly, monetarily is one thing. They want to get money, and they can. Joseph Cozy, who I mentioned before with Lincoln, he also loved fooling me, the professional. That was something he loved to do, and he felt great pride in being able to do that. There was another forger who was, his name is escaping me right now, strangely, but when he was young, he used to forge quite a bit, and he was caught, placed into prison. When he got out, he went straight and went into business and made a fortune for himself and began collecting. And he collected a lot of autographs. He told a story about himself that one time this is a long time ago now, I think back in the 40s, or maybe in the 50s, 40s, I think, he purchased something from Sotheby's in London, and a Washington letter, and it came to him, and he opened up the package. It was his. He was so excited. He kept it. He was so impressed that he had fooled Sotheby's with that, but he kept it as well. So it's complex. They do it for money, do it for ego, all of that.
When you're looking, say, at a signed book, something else that I've learned to look for. I had a copy of Sidney Lanier's poems that was supposedly signed by Lanier, and then it had a date right under it, 30 years after his death. It's kind of hard to, accept that as being real, since it was in the same handwriting.
One of the other things you've got to look for is dating. And I mentioned how the handwriting is maybe in early life or mid or later life, but also a date. And my first autograph of Lincoln that I found was a forgery, was because of dates. And it was a little note from City Point, in Virginia, and Lincoln, I found, was in Washington, D.C. that day. So that's how I learned that particular one wasn't. And so dating is positively something one should look for.
Sometimes I wonder if these criminals would put as much energy and intellect into going straight as they do into going crooked, how much successful they would have been.
True, but then I wouldn't have my forgery collection.
And when you read about art forgers who've, come over to the good side and start tracking down other forgers.
One was interesting, of course, was Lee Israel. I never met her. And that's as I told you, the film, Can You Ever Forgive Me? And I saw the film, and I know a couple of colleagues that she interacted with, and they've spoken at length about their time with her. But the film really got me. I almost wanted to really sue them, because booksellers look so bad in that throughout the film. Every one of them looked shady. But what really got me was at the end of the film, if you remember, she now was out of prison and had gone straight, but she was walking by a bookshop and saw one of her own letters forged in the window. She went in to tell him about it. And if you remember what the last part was, she leaves, and the dealer, and you see it from the outside looking into the shop window, he comes out and takes the letter, starts to remove it, thinks a moment, and then puts it back. Well, first of all, that really angered me that they did that, showing a dealer doing that. The second thing, though, he was putting it back in sunlight. What were you doing?
Well, one last question I have for you here. That's a very good point. And you mentioned earlier that you have a collection of 70 plus forged Abraham Lincoln signatures that are going to make its way into a museum someday. But our average listener today, let's say they come across something, they eventually find out that it is not as advertised, it is not a legitimate signature from whether it was a movie star or an author or whomever. How should they handle that? You don't really want that to go back into the sales channel. What would you recommend for the ethics of an individual out there who came across something like that?
Well, if you can, of course, go back to the dealer or to the auction house and show them why you believe it's not good. You should have some proof, because they're going to ask for that. There's all over the map as to who will do what. That's why in PATA, we're very strict about that. If you can prove to us that it is, we're going to be ethical about that and take it back. And of course, that's why at the beginning, most of us dealers are very strict on ourselves. We don't want that, we don't want to put money into something, sell it even inadvertently, and it comes back, and then we eat the money. It happens. And sometimes we make mistakes. We're human. We can make that mistake. I did that early on with an Eisenhower that I sold to a young collector here in Chicago, and he was very good in his collecting. And he, after some time, a number of years, came back to me and showed me that it actually was an early auto pen in the 1940s, 1946, that Eisenhower tried an auto pen back then, didn't work well, and he let it go. But he came back with one that was exact. And of course, I took it back and gave him his money back. I mean, that's when I have to do that to keep my clientele. So you should try to go back. Sometimes you're just going to have to eat it. So that's why you have to be careful in the beginning. Certainly, I stay away, and most PATA does too, from sports, especially anything from the 60s on, and entertainment. It's just rife with others signing for people you're trying to collect.
Stick with what you know.
Yes.
Stick with what you know. Great. Lee, before I say goodbye to Daniel, I've got one for you. Lee, last week I asked our guests what were the top 10 books 100 years ago, and I think you got 5 out of 10 of them right.
Well, maybe I got 2 of the books right. I
and a couple
maybe
of
the others were just the authors.
Okay, well, this one, are you ready?
Okay, go ahead.
200 years ago.
Oh, Lord, I can't do that.
Best-selling book. 200 years ago, it was a novel about the Revolutionary War. Stick around, I'm going to tell you who it is.
I'm not going to get that one.
I think, well, we'll see. You've got 45 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Daniel. I didn't get halfway through my questions. That was very entertaining. I hope you'll come back again someday.
I'd be happy to do that, and thanks for having me, and I appreciate everyone watching.
And before you say goodbye, I know you've got your own radio show or your own weekly history show. Tell our listeners about your show before you leave.
Okay, well, thank you. We have 2 of them, actually, at alincolnbookshop.com as our website, and we look like a museum there, except you can walk away with the exhibits. And we have 2 shows we've been doing since 2004, something called A House Divided. And there we interview authors in our fields of expertise and specialization, Lincoln, the Civil War, and U.S. presidents. So if you go on alincolnbookshop.com, you'll see A House Divided, and you'll see the authors that are coming up. And we do it live streaming and then put them all so you can ask questions and then put them on YouTube where you can watch tons of them. They're there now. And our second one is Take a Break with History. We do that at 1 p.m. Central Time every Friday, and we take an artifact or 2 from our shop, and we talk about them, their meaning, their history, what they're about, and people seem to enjoy that. We started that with the pandemic, and we're now doing it regularly, Take a Break with History. So I hope you'll join us. It's on Facebook Live.
Excellent. Thank you. Take a Break with History. I'll be there. And you can drink from home. Just tea. Okay. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it.
All right. I don't know if Lee stepped aside here. Our next guest is Richard Minsky. He's been on the show before as a book artist, and we're going to talk about book artistry as well. But he's primarily here this week as the founder of the Center for Book Arts in New York City. Richard is preparing for a virtual benefit for the CBA, the Center for Book Arts. This is how it's being promoted on their website. Listen carefully. There's something in here I want to talk to him about. Our 2021 benefit celebrates books as a communal object. All of us at CBA play a role in turning ideas, feelings, and actions into books. We'll come together as a community of all kinds of makers for this event. Welcome back, Richard.
Hi, Ed. It's good to see you again.
Hey, and Lee's back with us too. Good.
Richard. Hi, Lee.
I'm not. There we go. Hi.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Hi, Richard.
Richard, when I read that mission statement, I want to know what you were thinking when you said celebrates books as communal objects.
What's a big difference between book art and painting or sculpture and any of the other kinds of studio art is that it takes a community to make a book. There's very few people who are like Dart Hunter, who ripped up his shirts and made the paper and cast his own typeface that he designed and printed it on the paper and wrote his books. There's not too many. There are some, but there are not too many book artists who do it like that. For the most part, you think of the other arts Well, there are performing arts that require a troupe, ballet, and orchestra. That's also a community, but that community is all performing in the same place and time. The community of book artists, when we get paper, it's handmade paper or it's machine-made paper. It may be made by an individual artisan. We may be printing from foundry type, lead type. We may be printing from monotype that somebody else set. We may be printing from our computer and printing on high resolution inkjet on handmade paper. We may bind our own books, or we may give them to somebody else to bind. We may design the binding, or somebody else might. So there are so many aspects of design and production involved in making something as simple as a book.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, we had Richard Stauffer from the University of Virginia on, and he used the words book ecosystem. And what I hear you talking about is even an ecosystem within the ecosystem, the book fabricators within the book community. And I think that's what the CBA is going to celebrate. Tell us about that celebration.
Well, it's really amazing. I was just thinking about that this week, that I started the Center for Book Arts in 1974. And there was nothing like it in America. And really, in the world, there was no place that brought together artists and artisans in a place where they could influence each other. At that time, you saw a lot of beautifully made books that really were not that interesting as visual objects. And you saw artists who were doing artist books that were really poorly made. And they needed a place to come together to influence each other, for the craftspeople to learn more about the creative art, and for the artists to learn more about the quality of craftsmanship. And if they didn't want to learn from each other, they could collaborate. So that's part of the communal aspect of it, is fostering collaboration as well as inspiration. And that was 1974. So when you figure that people don't get interested in this thing usually before they're maybe 10 years old. So anybody who is under 57 years old, which is a big part of the book art community now, was born into a world where there was a Center for Book Arts, where there was a place you could go and see exhibitions and learn the crafts and be inspired. So these people all took it for granted that a Center for Book Arts exists. Mm-hmm. And so the benefit is to keep it existing. There are now, subsequently, other people have copied my model. And I was only able to do this because I got my master's in economics at Brown University and did a couple of more years of graduate school at the New School. I understood the institutional economics well enough to create an organization that would survive. And that model obviously has survived for 47 years. And then Barbara Lazarus Metz started an organization called Artist Bookworks in Chicago that then became the Columbia College Chicago Center for Book and Paper Arts, mm-hmm. and which now is defunct. But now a new artist book house is coming up in the Chicago area. That's the Harley Mansion House in Evanston is going to be a center for book arts now, called Artist Book House. There's also the Minnesota Center for Book Arts in Minneapolis that Jim Sitter started. There's the San Francisco Center. They're now all over the country. And actually, there's a London Center for Book Arts. So people have taken this model, and there's demand for it. There are now thousands, tens of thousands of people who are advancing the art of the book and have taken up letterpress printing, hand book binding, paper marbling, all of the different arts. And that's why it's called Center for Book Arts. That's like the crafts of bookmaking are the arts, but we exhibit book art. We use the arts to make art. And we'd like to keep that going on, certainly past my lifetime. And sure. This is an opportunity for people to have a good time, see some artists perform, to honor Allison Knowles, who's one of the great early book artists and Fluxus artists, and you can we screen share? I can show you a bit of, I can show the audience a little bit about that.
Sure, Alan. Do you have? There we go.
Okay, that's good. So if you go to the Center for Book Arts website at centerforbookarts.org, you can click on this link here, and you can go to the see. You can see Allison right there, and there are, you can get tickets. There's a sliding scale tickets available for people who can't afford them, from $5 on up, and you can pay $500 and get into a event salon for a half hour with the founder of the Center for Book Arts. That's me. And you can host a private salon for $1,000 with 8 of your guests. And there's poetry reading by John Yao. Buzz Spector performs. There's a lot of things, and you get benefits.
Are you playing the violin, Richard?
I will not be playing the violin there. Although maybe
then I'm not paying.
Then
I'm not paying. You're not playing the violin.
I like that idea, Ed. I think that's a great idea.
A private concert.
And I'll play a fiddle tune. I'll play a fiddle tune for. I've been working on the Battle Hymn of the Republic, actually. I think it's an appropriate tune for today's American society, how divided it is. I think that's a tune that might help bring it back together again.
Debut that on the 4th of July this year?
Well, that's another time.
Yeah. Richard, where exactly is the Center for the Book Arts located?
Well, the Center for Book Arts is located at 28 West 27th Street in Manhattan, in what's called the Flatiron District. It's open again to the public. Actually,
great. You survived the pandemic. Great. That's so wonderful.
Well, it's been open all over the world now. I've conducted 2 or 3 critique workshops where I get a dozen people in who. There were librarians who brought books from their collections. There are curators. There are artists. There are dealers. There are critics. All come to learn how to critique book art. It's something I've been doing for about 40 years now. Going around, I used to go around the country and conduct these workshops, and I started doing it over Zoom. I was scheduled to teach a class in printing on the iron hand press last June. And of course, that got canceled because of the COVID. But what's happened at the Center for Book Arts is the center now has more income from classes and workshops than they did with live classes, because students
wonderful
all over the world.
That's wonderful. What
and this
the iron hand press? What was the iron hand press there, Richard?
We in 1975, I got when I was still running the Center for Book Arts, I got a Washington hand press. A beautiful, very large Washington hand press, and I teach on that at the Center for Book Arts. It's a classic, beautiful press that you can print beautifully on. And to me, that's at the heart of letterpress printing, because that really hasn't changed since before Gutenberg, when they were printing books from woodblocks. There was still a press with a platen that came down and pressed a piece of paper. That's very fundamental.
And what's the size of this? Is it print?
So it's like a 35-inch.
So you do broad size as well?
Oh, yeah, posters. I mean, you could do big posters. I may be able to find a screen share for you. Maybe not that quickly, but you can, also wherever you are. First of all, this benefit is virtual, so you can be anywhere in the world and attend the benefit. That's the key element. It's the first ever virtual benefit the center has done. And it really is expanding the constituency remarkably. But right now, people can go onto the Center for Book Arts website. If you screen share again, I can show you a couple of things that your audience can go to right now. If you go here and click on exhibitions, not only can you read about and see current exhibitions that are at the center, and if you want to go in person, if you're in the area, you can make an appointment. It's limited how many people can go in because of COVID, but you can reserve an in-person visit. And are we screen sharing this?
Yep.
Okay. And if you go down further on the exhibitions page, you'll see a bunch of upcoming and current exhibitions. And you can also see 270 previous exhibitions, 292 it's up to now. They've been working on moving from, this is a new website, so I'm still not that familiar to how to navigate it. They're making a beautiful new website. You can go to the old website. There's a link here for that, too. I might be able to share it. But you can see, for example, this is the Book Arts in the USA exhibition. You can go through the entire catalog. People who don't know much about what book art is, for one thing, I explain it. This was an exhibition I curated in 1990 that traveled all over Africa and Latin America. And you'll see there are sculptural bookworks like Barton Benish's censored book tied up with nails driven through it, fine press books, altered books, finely printed books, illustrated books. And so there are just so many different things.
What a worthwhile cause this benefit is going to be, the preservation of books. Thank you, Richard. Before I turn it over to Lee and see if she has any questions, I wanted to ask you, Richard, last time you were here, you had the pop-up book clamshell. What are you working on these days personally?
Right now, I'm just finishing up my pandemic project. Last April, I said, I got to do something for the pandemic and, keep myself from going crazy. Not that I'm usually just tied up in my studio, so it's not all that different, but I got a hold of the very first printing of the first best English translation, John Payne's translation of the Decameron. I got it in wrappers, the original privately printed Japan paper edition. And this is the, to the best of my knowledge, the very earliest and best printed of that edition, illustrated. And so this is what I designed. This is alum toad goatskin. It's 3 volumes. And
what year was that printed?
This is 1886.
Okay.
Before 1886, all of the English translations, all the really erotic parts were left in Italian or in a French translation until this one. And they are graphic and funny. I mean, Boccaccio is hilarious, particularly in his erotic stories. They are laugh out loud erotic stories.
I've been following that rebinding on Facebook and Instagram. Are you about done with it?
This volume 1 is done, and I just put the end papers today in volume 2, and I'm just by tomorrow night I should have the end papers in volume 3. I'm that close to being finished. Then I have to make a slipcase for it, and I also got the Holland paper version, which is the slightly cheaper paper version, still beautiful, of the same edition. And this is before the Beyond Society edition. So it's really very interesting. So I have this beautiful, in the original binding, set of the same edition that someone can use as their reading copy so that they don't have to dirty this one.
Well, you are coming out of this pandemic just as exuberant as you went into it. Lee, is Lee back with us? Lee, do you have any questions for Richard?
Yes, I have one. You talked about the center bringing together artists and craftsmen. Where do the writers come into this equation? Are most of the books that the folks do, I guess what I'm asking is, are there writers involved, or are they using books that have already been written by somebody?
All of the above.
Okay.
And some of them have no words at all. And we also have a poetry broadside series and a chapbook competition that's been going on for decades. And we have readings where poets come in and a book artist makes a broadside of the poem, one of the poems that they're reading. And in our competition, we actually produce a complete chapbook of a poet. So there's a whole literary aspect to the center too. And a lot of people come in who make the entire book from scratch. They write and illustrate it and print it and bind it.
Okay. You also said everything that went into making something as simple as a book. in getting ready for today, I was looking at some of yours online, and there is nothing simple about the ones you do.
It's simple.
Nothing.
It's simple. It's
Oh.
simple when you've been doing it for 60 years.
Well, that's probably true. That's probably true. Are you planning to put all 3 volumes of the Decameron in one slipcase?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I love triple slipcases. They are fun to make, and they look great on the shelf, and that way the books are preserved. And I may make them so that you can leave the slipcase on the shelf and pull the tape and the book will slide out of it.
Okay.
I don't like when you take books, a slipcase off the shelf and all the other books collapse on each other.
One last question here for you, Richard. Who is the entertainment at the show? And tell us a little bit about her.
Oh, well, there's several people who are entertainment. There are the honoree, Allison Knowles, and actually people can read about her on the site. There are pages about Allison. She was making important bookworks in the 1960s, making books of giant pages that hung that you would walk through. I mean, that's very exciting stuff. Buzz Spector is going to be there. Buzz makes many kinds of things, from prints to book sculptures. He was formerly the chair of the art department at Washington University in St. Louis. We have performing arts. We also have a performing group of musicians who are going to be performing there also, and a very fascinating and original group of musicians. And again, if you go to the Center for Book Arts page, you can click on a link and you can listen to some of their compositions of this quartet that is really worth listening to. And then in the salon, if you come to the Founders Salon, I'm your entertainment, and I'm going to follow your advice, and I'll bring the fiddle.
Okay, very good. Well, one of these days, you don't have the fiddle close at hand, do you? Can you take us out of the segment with a little ditty?
Oh my goodness, it's not close enough that it wouldn't delay you from.
All right, next time. Next time.
Okay, next time you got a deal. Remind me in advance.
I will do that. Instagram doesn't do you justice. We want it live and in living color.
Okay. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Richard. Keep smiling.
Bye, Lee.
Bye.
Hey, Lee, I don't know about you, but I like the new format on this show when we all get to be on the screen at the same time talking to each other.
Now that we've learned about the mute and unmute button after our little tutorial with Alan last week.
Yes.
Yeah, that's much better.
I'm sure he'll have another tutorial for us at the end of the show today.
He's going to teach me how to do pictures at some point.
And me how to do PowerPoints. All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you haven't left. And this is the Rare Book Cafe, brought to you every Saturday from me in Portland, Oregon, from Lee in Calhoun, Georgia, from our executive producer in Florida, to just about everybody all over the world, where the topics are priceless and the conversation is free. Next up, we have our weekly segment, Things Found in Old Books, by bookman David Hess of the Bookman Bookstore in Orange, California. Every week he comes to us with some great things he finds on the inside cover, or maybe being used as a bookmarker right in the center of the book. David is pre-recorded with his latest discoveries, and let's see what he's brought us this week.
Hello, this is David from the Bookman in Orange, California, welcoming you to my segment today of Things Found in Used Books. And let's get started right away. I got some interesting stuff today. I want to cover it all. And we'll start off today with something that in this Anita Luce book, it's a little document that was apparently sent to postal customers in, I believe it was 1968, because that's when the 6-cent stamp was in use. And it says, "Dear postal patron, Number one, all Christmas cards will require 6 cents postage this year, sealed or unsealed. I'm not sure what unsealed means. Number two, cards may be sealed and contain a written message. Okay. Use zip codes in both the address and your return address. The local and out-of-town labels speed the movement and dispatch of your mail. Number five, mail early in December and early in the day. Now, it's not that interesting to look at, and it's not that ground-shattering of an item. But I thought, to me, it's interesting because it's a little window on to the way we did stuff, back.
Well, Lee, we have the joys of live streaming happening right now. Our connection with YouTube has failed, and so things found in used books will have to be delayed. Also, earlier, our connection with YouTube failed, and the program that we live stream on YouTube just disappeared. We don't know what's causing that, but we will certainly investigate that. But it appears to be problems with YouTube, and so we will be looking at that later. In the meantime, I see Ed and Lee, and I'm going to just pop over to Ed, and he will continue.
Continue where with what? You want,
Yeah.
you want me to back up to David?
Well, they unfortunately, YouTube has failed. I don't know why, but we lost connection with YouTube earlier when we were.
Damn, this was the best show yet.
We were live streaming, of course, on YouTube as well as on Facebook, and our friend Luke in Canada indicated that they had that suddenly the program wasn't there anymore, and I have looked now and found that it has failed and it is not there. So we don't know what has taken place, but we will find out what is going on. In the meantime,
ready for Mary Kay?
This is we may be, certainly. Unfortunately, she's got a couple of things queued up that are perhaps at YouTube, and I see actually that Mary Kay is Mary Kay. You're going to have to come in again because we can't see your picture. So she will come back in again, and there was no connection was lost there. So technical difficulties all over the place, unfortunately.
All right, well, I'm going to ask Facebook for my money back.
As well you should. So, well, Facebook is broadcasting us now as it appears.
Well, if we're being broadcast, let's get productive and start talking about
Okay.
books.
Would you like me to?
Definitely should be talking about books.
Okay.
That's
You
what
want me
the
to
program
promote
is
my
We do.
interview for the 22nd?
Let's hear what's coming up.
Okay. Shall I do that, Alan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that, in fact.
On the 22nd, I'm going to be interviewing Mignon Franklin Ballard, who is from Calhoun, though she lived most of her adult life in Fort Mill, South Carolina. And she's the author of 20-something books, many of them a couple of mystery series. But her latest book is called No Word for Goodbye. And while it's directed at middle school age kids, it's written very much on an adult level, and it's set at New Echota here in Calhoun, which was the last capital of the Cherokee before the removal in 1832. And it is for anyone interested in history of that period, her attention to detail is really amazing. The research she has done. Of course, she had the benefit of the new Ochota Historic Site here, and its director David Gomez, who helped out a lot with the research and who has a good library there. But she is a lovely lady. She's 86 years old, but you'd never know that. She's a member of the book club I belong to, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. She's going to join me here at my camera and talk about her career as a writer and what led her to write this book, and add some other things about Cherokee history. I told her I would come up with a list of questions, and then she could take that list and tell me what she really wants me to ask. So that's coming up on the 22nd.
92 years old and 24 books.
86 years old.
86 years.
86, yes. But she has 22, 24, something like that.
Oh, wow.
I once bought
Good for her.
Once bought a signed copy of one of her books at a bookstore in Cooperstown, New York. And we had trouble convincing the bookstore owner that we knew who she was, and that we're really excited to find the book. But she's, I had her cookbook on several weeks ago that her sister had put together for her with old family recipes when she graduated from college. Yeah. Well, that's who this is. But she is a good cook of desserts, because that's what she usually brings to book club.
Well, I am a good eater of desserts.
Yeah, well, we're going to have trouble getting that through. That's the problem with virtual.
Yeah, all right. Speaking of problems with virtual, is Mary Kay with us? Hey.
Now I'm unmuted. You should be able to hear me.
We have got this under control. We're getting to be old pros at this. Well, at least getting old. Part of that. All right, everybody. Mary Kay Watson, our favorite Shakespearean illustrator, a regular on the Rare Book Cafe. This week, she's here to talk to us about The Night of the Hunter.
Yes, this is one of my favorite books. I bought this book. I had seen the movie several times. One of my favorite movies. 2011, I bought this book off of Abe Books from Vagabond Books in Pasadena, California. And what interested me was that it said it had a book plate. When I got it, it has the book plate of Helena Carter Meshikoff. She was a glamour girl of the silver screen, and she was married to Michael Meshikoff. And if I sing the first few bars, dum dum dum, that might tell you what he produced.
Dragnet.
Yes. So she was married to him, and this is her book. I paid only $30 for the book, and that included the shipping. So that's just one of the exciting things you get sometimes when you go to book fairs or buy books online. It's pretty exciting. Anyway.
Well, Mary Kay, you said it was one of your favorite books and one of your favorite movies. The French film magazine, Cahiers Cinema, said that this film was one of the best films of all time, right behind Citizen Kane. Now, in case of any of our viewers are not familiar with Night of the Hunter, we're going to run a quick promo of the movie.
Oh, please.
Okay, then we'll have a little more context.
Never told you threw it in the river, did he?
I can hear you whispering, children, so I know you're down there.
Feel myself getting awful mad. Here it's all the passion and suspense, the heart-pounding warmth of the best-selling novel that gripped millions. Superb, unforgettable performances by an extraordinary array of talent. Figured I was gone.
Run. Hide in the staircase. Run quick. Ruby, get. What do you want?
I want them kids.
I'm giving you to the count of three to get out of here. Then I'm coming across the kitchen shooting you.
The combined powers of Paul Gregory and Charles Lawton brought the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial to Broadway. Now the screen receives that same creative, electrifying impact. The Night of the Hunter.
Well, Mary Kay, the age-old question, which do you prefer, the movie or the book? Tell us about the book.
The book and the movie pretty much follow each other parallel. I have to say, I love the movie because I'm a visual person anyway, because I'm an artist, but I love the movie, but I love the book too. I mean, there are things that are written in the book that are exactly what is said in the movie. Just to give you some background, Davis Grubb was born in Moundsville, West Virginia. And he wanted to be an artist. Now you will read maybe on one of his jacket covers for The Watchman that he always wanted to be a writer. But in the West Virginia archives, it says he wanted to be an artist. He did study art at Pittsburgh Institute of Art, but he was colorblind. So I'm sure that held him back some. So he turned to writing. And he grew up at a time, he was born in 1919. So he grew up at a time when the Ohio River flows next to Moundsville, comes out of Pittsburgh, where the Allegheny and the Monongahela come together. They form the Ohio in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he grew up seeing riverboats, steamboats, paddle boats, whatever you want to call them, going down the river. And he also grew up, when his grandfather was a steamboat captain too, by the way. He also grew up in the city that hosted West Virginia's first state penitentiary. West Virginia was signed into statehood during the Civil War by Abraham Lincoln, June 20th, 1863, but we didn't have a state penitentiary. So it took, I think, 5 or 6 years, and they started to build one. And the Moundsville prison was modeled on a smaller scale after the prison in Joliet, Illinois. And that's a picture of it. It's a very, very scary prison. It opened at the end of the 1800s, and it closed in 1995 because the state Senate decided that the 5-foot by 7-foot cells were inhumane. So they closed the prison. Now it's a tourist spot. But he would have seen, probably growing up, he would have seen hangings, because they did hangings, public hangings there until I believe it was the mid-30s. And they hung a fella that was a little big, I guess, and he was decapitated when they dropped him. So they stopped doing hangings or public hangings, and the hangings then were by invitation only. So this is the world that Davis Grubb grew up in. And there was a crime that happened in 1931 committed by a man named Harry Powers. It wasn't his real name. In a couple of weeks when I come back, I'm going to talk about the real crime. But Davis Grubb modeled this book, his story, off of that crime, and used Harry Powers' name as the main character. When Charles Lawton decided he wanted to direct this movie, he got in touch with Davis Grubb. They met. They spent 3 or 4 days together at Davis Grubb's home in Philadelphia. And Davis Grubb actually drew pictures for the storyboard for the movie. James Agee wrote the screenplay Charles Lawton wasn't happy with the screenplay. He went back and rewrote the screenplay, but gave James Agee the credit for it. And you won't see Charles Lawton's name in the movie giving himself credit for the screenplay, but he pretty much rewrote that screenplay to follow the book more closely. The visions in that movie, that trailer that you just ran, those weren't even those weren't even anywhere near the best parts. The movie, yeah, the movie is really from the children's point of view. The book is considered a Southern Gothic, and you have that feeling, that Gothic novel feeling when you're watching the movie and when you're reading the book. It's hard to talk about the book and the movie and separate them because they're so much alike. Charles Lawton called the book a nightmarish Mother Goose, and he loved the story. When he directed the movie, the critics didn't like the movie, so they really slammed the movie, and Charles Lawton never directed another movie, which is really a great loss. Later on, as usually happens, this movie developed a cult following. So it's yes, it's a very, very good movie. I recommend anyone who hasn't seen it to rent it or just go out and buy it. You won't be sorry. And definitely read the book. The book is it's incredible.
And that's not too far from where you are, right?
No, Moundsville is probably about an hour and a half from me. It's up in the Panhandle. I believe it's south of Wheeling. Wheeling, West Virginia is up in the Panhandle, up in the tip of West Virginia. So it's just a little south of there.
I think James Agee won the Pulitzer Prize for a autobiographical novel, A Death in the Family.
Okay.
I think that was after he passed away.
Right.
The movie is also available on Amazon Prime.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I watched it last night.
Yeah,
it's again.
I reread the book again for this segment, and
well, I did too.
Yeah, it's such a, Southern Gothics are especially if you were born south of the Mason-Dixon line, like Lee and I are, you relate to those stories. Davis Grubb wrote several books. Another one of his books was made into a movie. It's called Fool's Parade, and it starred Jimmy Stewart. I have not seen that movie, and I haven't read the book. Davis Grubb worked for NBC Radio, and he wrote stories. He also wrote stories for shows like The Twilight Zone, which I find interesting in relation to my book because Helena Carter Meshikoff, who was the glamour girl that owned my book, her last movie was Invaders from Mars. And and she also did some things with NBC Radio. So I just wonder, if she'd ever met, there she is. She's gorgeous. If she had ever met Davis Grubb, if she knew Davis Grubb. But, I picture her in her fluffy mules and her, her robe, sitting on a settee reading this book. It's just kind of neat, to own a book that belonged to someone that you can picture in your mind, But
I haven't heard that category before. Southern Gothic. Who else would you put in that category? How about you, Lee? You must have some Southern Gothics.
Well, I don't know that I can bring a name to mind, but it's almost the feeling that it should start out. It was a dark and stormy night, or that there's this scary house, up on a hill that you're looking at.
The Brontes, the American version of the Brontes.
Right, that kind of thing. Or something like The Haunting of Hill House, but I don't know that it's Southern. But it's almost an attitude rather than anything else, a kind of a belief in evil as a living force kind of thing, which is the feeling you get from this book. There's not much that's graphic violence in this. I mean, there's not, but the feeling that something could happen any minute is always there. And it's scarier really than something like, a slasher movie where there's blood everywhere.
Like Cape Fear. Was Cape Fear a book before a movie?
Cape Fear is a scary movie. Cape Fear is kind of along the same lines as far as the atmosphere. It is.
Dark.
It is.
Dark.
Yeah. But it is a great book, though, isn't it, Lee?
It is. It's a wonderful book, and I think what you said is written from the standpoint, particularly of John. And at the end of the book, he doesn't remember. He doesn't remember who the Bridgie is. He doesn't remember the ice cream people. He doesn't.
Yes.
He doesn't remember these people. From his past, and he confuses. To an extent, he confuses preacher with his dad. There in a scene. And I guess it's the way that that Lillian Gish talks about the resilience of kids and their ability to get through things, and I think that's how he gets through it by forgetting some of it.
Our director has sent a little message across Faulkner. I was trying to think of Faulkner. I think
that's right.
Probably considered Southern Gothics.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just read a couple lines out of a paragraph? Because, being from this area, born and raised in the Ohio Valley, this book really touches me because I see these scenes described by him, and I'm there. I know those moments. We have those. So I want to just read a couple lines.
Please do.
In the Ohio Valley, it is the river that gives and takes the seasons. It is as if the mighty stream were the vast alluvial artery of the land itself, so that when the towns grow weary of snows and harsh fogs, the great heart pumps green spring blood down the valley, and the banks are warmed and nourished by it, and soon the whole environing earth blossoms despite itself, and the air comes alive, and lambs caper and bleat upon the hillside paths. And, I know those mornings when I go out and take a walk and there's a little bit of fog in the air, you feel like you're living in a river valley. You feel the water, you feel the course of that through the land. And this writing is really great. You need to read the book. I would just encourage everyone to read the book.
And of course, it's personal to you because of the geography, but that's what books are. All books, yes. whether you're from the Ohio Valley or from the Western states or the forests of Georgia. I mean, that's what just makes books so wonderful. How we relate to them.
And I have another connection. I have another connection to it too. The riverboats. Pittsburgh still has a couple riverboats that they operate. They usually just take them over to PNC Park for the ball games or Heinz Field. But when I was a child, when I was 6 years old, it was 1963. The showboat Rhododendron came down from Pittsburgh every year, and they would dock on Wharf Street down here on the Monongahela River. There it is. There's a picture of it. And my parents always put me in the summer arts program. It's my first year in the summer arts program, and we had a little theater group, and we put on a little dinner theater, and our play was Little Black Sambo, but our teacher wanted us to call it Little Sambo because in 1963, even then, that was not politically correct, so we called it Little Sambo, and I got to act on that riverboat. It's been defunct. They don't send the riverboats down here anymore, but you will find them in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's where the riverboats started on the Ohio River back in the late 1800s. So Davis Grubb's grandfather was probably, steering one of those riverboats. It's pretty neat. But the movie, like I said, the movie is based on the crime of Harry Powers, loosely based. Next time I'm here in a couple weeks, I'm going to talk about a book by Jane Ann Phillips called Quiet Dell. Quiet Dell is where the real life crime took place. It's right outside of Clarksburg, West Virginia, and I'm only about 40 minutes from there. So I'll talk about that in a couple weeks. But one more thing about Moundsville Prison. If you are familiar with the show Castle Rock, one of the seasons is filmed at Moundsville Prison. The prison that they use, it's so scary, that's Moundsville Prison. Also, Charles Manson's mother and uncle were inmates of Moundsville Prison for about 2 years. He actually grew up across the Ohio River from Moundsville when he was a kid, but his mom and uncle, they tried to pull off a robbery. She brought a guy out. This was in Charleston, West Virginia, I believe. She got a guy out of a dance hall or something, brought him out, and her brother held him up with a ketchup bottle. So it was called the ketchup bottle caper, and it was in all the papers. And probably pretty embarrassing for Charles Manson. He was a young boy when it happened. I think he was 5 or 6, something like that when it happened.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
I know. And so they ended up being put in prison in Moundsville. But evidently it was in all the newspapers at that time, and people made fun of it, the ketchup bottle caper.
Well, I'm looking to hear about that. I recently picked up several manuscripts from him. They were letters that were written to his publisher, and I bought them at auction, and I've turned a couple of them already. But it was kind of fun to just be holding that Charles Manson letter in your hand, and he wrote as creepily as he looked.
Yeah, well, he was on the Dale Carnegie courses. He followed the Dale Carnegie philosophy with people. And
is that how he got his charisma?
That's where he learned how to manipulate people. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. How to make friends and influence murderers, I guess.
I think we just found your second segment after your next one.
Well, maybe you should do it too with the information that you have on Charles Manson. That would be very interesting.
Let's see what we can come up with. All right, ladies, I asked at the middle of the show here. Our question was, what was the best-selling novel 200 years ago? It was set in the American Revolution. It was The Spy, The Tale of the Neutral Ground by Lee.
Don't know.
James Fenimore Cooper, published in 1821.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, goodness.
The Deer Slayer.
Do you know who was a big fan of James Fenimore Cooper? Barry, J.M. Barry, who wrote the Peter Pan books.
No kidding.
Yeah, he grew up, which is interesting because, that's an American author, but he grew up reading the Fenimore Cooper novels and the Indians and the flavor of his characters in Peter Pan. He gets those ideas from growing up reading those books.
Everything in the book ecosystem is interconnected.
Yeah, it's amazing things you kind of link together.
Yeah, that's fun. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up a couple of minutes early today because we lost one of our segments due to technical difficulties. But we're going to be back here next week, 12:30 Eastern Daylight Savings Time, the Rare Book Cafe, the Book Lovers Rendezvous, where the topics are priceless and the conversation is free. Lee Lynn, Mary Kay Watson, thanks for joining us this week, and our other guests, Daniel Weinberg and Richard Minsky. Say goodbye.
Bye.
See you next week, folks.
Thank you.